Hello and welcome back to another episode of From the Field. I am your host, Casey Ewer. I'm a solution architect located in Wellington, New Zealand. And we also have today with us Martin Carrolls. More about him later and he'll introduce himself. As you may have noticed, we are in our new time slot. We used to be broadcasting between 7 to 8 p.m. New Zealand time, and we have decided to move this more to a lunchtime focused time slots to give more time to people who have that lunch and learn type feel and give something interesting to watch and learn about over lunch. So this episode is going to be a continuation, so to speak, from last week's episode, which was done by Tony Fendel, the security services you should know. If you haven't watched that, I would highly recommend you watch that. We had lots of amazing questions and covered a lot of really good content that everyone really should get down and actually start learning about. But taking that one step further, we're going to have an awesome and amazing deep dive with Control Tower with Martin here, who is from one of our partners. So I am going to hand over to Martin now for him to do a quick introduction.
Hey, Casey. Thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Martin Carrolls. I am also located in Wellington, just like Casey. And I am a AWS Principal Cloud and DevOps Architect for a company called Levin, who is an AWS partner, which is how Casey and myself know each other. I've been living in New Zealand for about 3 years now, loving every single minute of it. And I'm originally from the Netherlands. So if you're picking up on an accent and you're wondering where it's from, that's where that's from. I've been working in IT pretty much my entire adult life, and I decided to move into building and architecting into AWS years ago because back in the day when I was building private cloud solutions for some of my customers, I found myself advising them to move more of their stuff into AWS, and the light bulb went on, and I went like, why not just do everything in AWS because it makes way more sense.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly get behind that statement. And yeah, if you are on Twitch and just definitely do comment. We'd love to hear your questions, know what you think and what you're thinking and what you want to learn more about. So don't hold back. Don't worry about interrupting us or anything like this. This is not us. Just I'm sitting here on our was a preaching horse and just expelling one knowledge in one way. We really do want that that two-way type of interaction. And don't worry about derailing us. That's what... That's part of the fun of doing the whole live stream type audience.
Absolutely.
So, Martin, I will hand this over to you now, and I will sit there. And if any questions come through, I will jump in and make sure that I steal your focus.
Awesome, Casey. Thank you so much. And yes, just like Casey said, it's all about collaboration. So absolutely ask those questions. So the point of this talk, like Casey said earlier, is to go through the actual steps that you will have to do when you're managing a control tower governed landing zone. Tony Fendel last week was talking about control tower in part and about the what and the why you should use it, what it does, all of those wonderful things. Normally in my day-to-day, I do a lot of designing and diagramming, explaining to people, just like Tony did, the why and the what of landing zones. But I find that a lot of my engineers who I work with, or some of my client engineers, are really interested in the how. How do you do things in Control Tower? How do I create accounts, et cetera, et cetera? And just helping them, guiding them through those steps, demoing it, doing it for them, I find really demystifies the whole thing and allows them to go in and, be more effective. So hopefully at the end of this talk, you'll be more comfortable spinning up your own landing zone and going back to your organization as an absolute boss who knows everything about landing zone now and is familiar with all the different screens that we're going to be seeing. On the screen is the title slide of the talk, which is not very interesting. So let's move on. Here is my mandatory slide about my employer. Is that showing up correctly there, Casey?
Instead of muted while talking. Yep, that's not my first time. If you go between the slides a couple times, maybe that will unstick it.
That's interesting.
No, I've never seen that. That must be a Mac thing.
Yes, I will try to reshare my screen. Please stand by.
Kritz, you asked a very interesting question there about how to transition to an SA type position. Actually, I think while Martin's going through that problem solving, I'll actually jump into it and ask. So like the AWS certification process is a really good way to get that high level view of all of the components of AWS and where they fit in and the common use cases that they are. But it really comes down to a lot of experience, like building out your own solutions, understanding the pros and cons of each one, and what type of business would actually like that particular, that particular solution. Because one size fit all doesn't really exist in business, because every business has their own set of requirements, governance, constraints in terms of manpower or woman power, or like in terms of budgeting. So it's quite a fluid type a field where just that sitting down and that was it being learning and being curious, so to speak. But yeah, going through those certifications is definitely a really, really good one. Making sure you have your associate solution architecture and your professional solution architecture will be a really good path, because that shows to your current employer or to a future employer that you do understand that, and you know how to leverage AWS in the best way possible to deliver that. And also having maybe like understanding the more on-prem, so you can actually do that, so to speak, mapping from on-prem onto the cloud and understanding that journey as well. So it's just about just sit there and play around and getting an understanding of how everything works together. And does that make sense, or would you like me to explore something a little bit more? I think it's Chris Zitico. Martin, how are we going on your side? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. It was working fine just earlier. I am sharing now. Are you seeing this?
Live demo. Anything live will go wrong. I'm sure everyone here has experienced similar situations where you're just like sweating bullets. All right, it's about the recovery though.
All right, here we go. Let's move on. Here's the mandatory slide about my employer. It's really short. I just really need to talk about it really quick. I work for 11, which is the company up in the top. It's part of the Spark Business Group. Everybody in New Zealand is probably familiar with Spark. If you want to do cool stuff in the cloud and you already have a relationship with Spark, or you want to start a relationship with Spark, reach out to them and ask for 11 or CCL. There's other really cool parts in the Spark Business Group as well, like Curious and Digital Island, who do really cool stuff with AI and data analytics. So if you want to do something cool in the cloud, we probably have a team that is capable of doing it. All right, moving on to the next slide. Yes, that is a lot snappier. All right, pretty good recovery. I talked about the goal of this talk earlier. Pretty much, I want you to be comfortable with the actual work that you need to do within the AWS Control Tower Governed Landing Zone. So let's talk about the how. How are we actually going to be doing the things? Here I had a slide where I wanted to talk a little bit about day 0, 1, and 2 operations. Everybody's familiar with day 0, where we do the planning. Day 1 is where we build the actual thing, which is really cool and interesting and exciting. But day 2 is also really important, because that's where we're actually going to be doing most of the maintenance, upgrades, etc., etc. I am going to start with day 1, which is one of our favorite days. I need to talk a little bit about what a Control Tower Governed Landing Zone is. But I'm not going to go into too much detail, because, again, like Casey said, last week, Tony Findall did an amazing talk where he actually explains why you should be using it and how you go from that natural evolution from a single AWS account to an AWS account with multiple VPCs for multiple apps, and then naturally transition into a multi-account environment. It just seems to be the natural evolution for everybody that's growing their business within the cloud. And AWS Control Tower is just the tool to manage that properly. Let's assume that we all agree that we want a multi-cloud environment, or that we have one already, and that we want help managing it, or we want to manage it properly. And that's where Control Tower comes in. All right, what do you need? We're jumping straight into day 1, like I said. So we will need an AWS account. It's pretty self-explanatory, with admin or root access, and no production workloads in there, ideally. Don't go do this on an account where you're already running production. If you already have a production account, spin up a new one and have that be your Control Tower management account. What you will also need is an email address or a selection of email addresses. Distribution lists are pretty great. There's also this neat thing you can do with a lot of email providers where you just have an email address and you can add a plus to it, like martin@example.com, Martin plus Control Tower at example.com, and they all get sent to the same email address. Super handy, neat little trick. Use it. It's awesome. And a fair bit of time, because it takes some time to set this up, but not for us, because we're using the magic of pre-recorded demos. All right, so we're going straight into it. You're going to log into that AWS account using the root account, and you're going to go to the services panel, and you're going to look for Control Tower. So far, pretty simple, right? Once you get there, you should be greeted with this lovely page, because you shouldn't have one yet. Don't ignore pages like this. I find that we usually just, glance by them and don't give them a look, but there's actually a lot of really good reference material in here. So before you actually spin it up, take some time to actually go through it. Maybe, copy some of those links that are in there, because they are going to be super useful later on. Or don't, and just slap that orange button like as fast as you can. That's fine too. But
I'm guilty of that.
Me too.
So
it's like, do as I say, don't do as I do kind of situation. The first page of the deployment talks about the pricing and the regions. Pricing is important for a lot of people, obviously. Control Tower itself actually comes at no cost, which is really cool. But it does deploy a bunch of resources that do generate a bit of cost. Stuff like Service Catalog, CloudTrail, AWS Config, CloudWatch, SNS, S3, VPCs. VPCs don't really cost anything. It's more the NAT gateways in the VPCs, but still. But a vanilla Control Tower is surprisingly cheap. If you keep it simple, you can deploy a Control Tower with multiple accounts in your personal account. I've got one running in my personal account, and it costs me cents per month. So if you do want to experiment with this in your personal account, then set up billing alerts. Yeah, there's lots of blog posts out there on how to do that properly. Just make sure that once you go over like $10, you get an alert sent to you. That way you won't run into any nasty surprises. Scrolling to the bottom of the page, there's the region deny settings. Now, this is disabled by default, but it might be a good idea for you and your organization to turn it on. Maybe you're dealing with data sovereignty. You're not allowed to have data in any other country, even though in our case right now, talking about Australia, but that general region. And if you're wondering what your home region is, it's the region you see in the top there where you see Sydney. Be mindful of that. I might have deployed some Control Towers in the US, and figured that out later on. That happens to every one of us. But, it's really good to just be mindful of your region all of the time. I'm going to leave everything as default for now and move on. So in step 2, we get to name our 2 organization units that our accounts will be deployed in initially. I'm going to talk about what the organizational units are and what they do later on. But for now, we're just going to talk about, the names of them. I've not really ever encountered a good reason to rename the security one. It's a really good name, and it makes a lot of sense. The additional OU can be renamed to something like production or test if you want. But after Control Tower is deployed, you can create as many OUs as you want. So it's not really super important. And I usually just keep the name Sandbox, because most of the time what people want to do initially is play around with it. So Sandbox makes a lot of sense. Here we get to configure the 2 accounts that will be deployed and KMS encryption settings if you want. The account that you are deploying the Control Tower in will be referred to from now on as the management account. This is why you can't set the email address. The account already has one. It's what you use to log in as the root user. The other 2 accounts are going to be the log archive account and the audit account. I will explain what they are later on, but these are the pre-rolled accounts that you need and will get when you deploy a Control Tower environment. These accounts need email addresses. So do what we talked about earlier, and either create them and make sure that they're ready to go, or create those aliases. Small tip, test them. Yeah, even though you're like 100% sure that the email addresses are fine, it's such a small little thing to do to go into your private email box and just send an email and see if it comes through. Because if it doesn't, it's problematic. So just test those email addresses, please.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's such a small thing to do, right? And it's such a big payoff. Trust me, that one time when you're going to find out that you made a typo, you're going to hate yourself for not sending a test email. All right, so that's all there is to it. As with everything you do in AWS, you get this lovely review page. Again, check the email addresses, and yeah, if you're happy with the result, just scroll down and click the check mark that you know what you're doing, and set up your landing zone. Easy as. Now that's going to take you back to the main page of AWS Control Tower, and we're greeted with this lovely blue banner that's telling us, hey, I'm building stuff for you. So it says it's going to take, what is that saying, 60 minutes? It doesn't usually take 60 minutes. It's more around the 10, 15-minute mark in my personal experience. Your mileage may vary. I probably depends on what region you're in. But go and get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, right? Or go do something else and check back on it later. If you give it enough time, you'll be greeted with this. Green. We all like green. It says that your landing zone is complete. So in that light green banner up there, it actually shows you all of the different resources that the control tower has set up for you, which boils down to 20 preventative guardrails, 2 detective guardrails, an account factory. It has set up single sign-on. It has set up 2 organizational units and 3 accounts. Actually, 2 accounts. You already had the one. But there you go. You can click all of those things and have a look. There's the user portal URL as well in that main page. That's going to become important later. You might want to make a copy of that or take note of it. You can find it again later, but in your initial page, the user portal URL is right there, and you're going to be using it a lot. So make a bookmark. All right.
Someone's calling out your partridge in a pear tree at the very end of their list.
Ah, nice. I put little jokes in there to see if people pick up on it, and if they're listening to me or actually reading my slides. I don't know. Do they get points, Casey?
I don't know. This is your slides.
All right. So here's the accounts tab of the control tower, and we can see the accounts that are in there. It's kind of meta because the management account is actually the account that the control tower is deployed into and is referring to it as well. So we have control tower in the management account, which is talking about the management account. It's kind of like account inception. The management account is the one that we already had, and then we have the audit account and the log archive account. So from this moment on, if we want to do anything that is considered control tower management, we need to log into that management account. The log archive account is the account where all the audit logs of all of the accounts, now and future accounts of your control tower environment will get shipped to. People who do security and auditing love that feature. It's essentially whenever anything happens in any of the accounts, an audit log of it will be shipped to that central account. And clearly that's where you want to go if you want to see what's going on. If something weird has happened, something dodgy, it doesn't mean that you can no longer see the audit log in your accounts, in the separate child accounts, but they're also centrally stored within the log archive account. And the audit account is a break glass type of account that gets used by security people and auditors, where they log in if something has happened that, makes us all very sad and anxious. If they have a reason, they can log into that account. It doesn't mean that account gives them access to all of the other accounts, but it gives them programmatic access to all of the other accounts. So what you do is you set up Lambdas or other neat tools to actually check out what has happened in other accounts. It's for, auditing and security purposes, and it's a really cool feature. Could do complete different talk about that account. There's lots of information out there. Go look it up. All right,
finance let's talk about the account.
Yes,
finance
true.
And other heavily regulated and governance-rich organizations like public sector, etc. They really like that account. So that just gives you an indication of where that target is sitting.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about OUs, or organizational units. I think pretty much everybody knows what they are, right? They are abstractions, container abstractions, where you can put accounts into. Instead of applying settings directly to the accounts, you can apply settings to OUs and then move the accounts into those OUs, and then they will inherit those settings. Makes sense. Guardrails are awesome. I think Tony talked about it as well.
Very briefly. Yeah, very briefly. It'd be good to go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, they're a set of pre-created rules by AWS. You can't really create your own guardrails, but you can have the guardrails that have been pre-created for you and apply them to your control tower, OUs, or accounts. They can be detective or preventive, depending on whether that basically means if they're SCPs or config management, and they basically say you will never ever do this, or if you do that thing, we will alert on it. They just make a lot of sense, and I'm going to go into more detail later on, but they are great and you should use them all the time and as many of them as you can. Account Factory, that is like the most awesome tool that, well, I find personally one of the best tools that comes with Control Tower. Before Control Tower, if you had an organization and you wanted to create an account that is in that organization, you had to do it through the organization service. That option is still available and actually being leveraged by Control Tower. But from this moment on, now that we have a Control Tower-based environment, if you want to create a new account, you should be doing so through the Account Factory. Let's give it a spin. Let's start using our Control Tower-based environment. So the proper way of accessing it now would be SSO. It set SSO up for us, so we should log in that way and no longer use root accounts. If we go to the Control Tower management page and navigate to users and access in the left-hand menu, we see that SSO has been set up for us. If you click the View in AWS Single Sign-On button in this overview page, that actually takes you to the SSO service. You don't need to go to there from here. You can just directly go to SSO, but just wanted to show you that it's all linked together. If we go to SSO and we look at the Users tab, we can see the lonely root account user that has been created for us automatically. What Control Tower does is, hey, I have a root account, so I'm going to actually set up an SSO user to mirror that root account for you as well, which is really nice. You should be getting an email to the email address that you have on the management account saying, hey, I've got an SSO user for you now. But I like just creating my own user to make sure. And part of this demo is also to walk you through that. How do you actually create an SSO user that you can use with your Control Tower? So let's do that. You click the button Add User. Go on, Casey.
I was thinking of, like, from memory as well, you can only enroll an account from the SSO user. You can't use the root user to do it from memory.
No,
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, unless something has changed, and things do tend to change. But the last time I checked, that was the case. All right, so we want to create a new user, and this is pretty straightforward, right? You just give it a name, you give it an email address, first name, last name, display name. It's not actually that wild. What I like to do is send an email to the user with setup instructions. You can generate a password yourself. I think, security-wise, that's not great because now you have that email, you have that password. You need to send like login instructions and that password separately. I just like my users to take care of it themselves. I have to make the user a member of a group. Well, I don't have to, but I want to. And in my case, because it's me and it's my Control Tower, I want to be an admin. So this will give me the permission, all of the permissions that I want on this account and all of the child accounts, the current child accounts in my landing zone. There's a couple of groups already pre-made, and if you read through it, a lot of them actually make sense. The names are really, really, they make a lot of sense. You probably want to make a couple of more of these, and I'm going to show you how to do that later on as well. As with everything in AWS, here's that review page that we all love. And when you're happy, you just click, yep, do the thing, and you will get an email. And that kind of looks like this. So I get this lovely email saying, hey, Martin, you have a new SSO user. And if you click this button, you can accept that invitation. And oh, here's a user portal URL again. You might want to make a bookmark of this. So I click accept the invitation. That takes me to the URL. I get that AWS new user sign up page. As you can see, my password manager was being very helpful. It's like, hey, I've got a password for you, ready to go. And just click set new password, and you will be greeted with this amazing AWS Control Tower SSO login page. I love this page. It's so good because it just gives you everything that you need to see immediately. Here are the 3 accounts that we have. The management account is in the middle. I changed the IDs. That's why they look weird. And if you want to log into them, you just simply click on the management console link that's up there. You can also see the command line and programmatic access link next to the management console link. If you click on that, it'll create a little pop-up in your web page, and it shows you a bunch of environment variables that you can copy and paste so that you can use the AWS CLI or other information that you could use if you wanted to use it for, like, I don't know, something like Boto and Python or whatever. It's really cool. Usually you want to go to the management console So that's what we're going to click today for the management account. And there we go. We are now logged in as the SSO user. So if you look at the upper right hand, you can actually see that we are logged in as AWS reserved SSO underscore AWS administrator access underscore random string / Martin, which means I'm logged in as Martin and I've assumed the role AWS reserved SSO AWS administrator access. You can actually go to IAM and check that role out and actually see what's assigned to it. But yeah, that's a clear indicator that you are logged in as the SSO user. Awesome. Organizational units. Let's make one of our very own. This is one of the shortest things because it's not really, there's not a lot to it. Again, you go back to the AWS SSO, AWS Control Tower environment. Oops, excuse me. I just dropped my clicker. And you go to organizational units. To make a new one, again, slap that orange button and create an OU. This only needs two things, a name and a parent OU. It's one of the simplest things you could create. So I've chosen production because it makes sense. It resonates with a lot of people usually. And off you go. It's going through the process of enrolling the production OU. Now, if you're wondering, why is this taking time? It's because it's actually making a call to AWS organizations and creating an OU there. And then it is enrolling it into the control tower environment and applying guardrails and all the other good stuff. So the process is create the thing in orgs and then enroll it. That's why there's like a little wait thingy up there. Again, it's saying it's going to take 51 minutes. Usually takes about 5. Yeah, did you want to ask a question, Jason?
Yeah, I really want to dive into why you'd be creating additional OUs and what OUs benefits to provide. You might be going to say.
Right. That's a really good question. So usually what I see in the field is that you have a dev and test OU where you apply less guardrails and less service control policies, and you let people just basically play around with services that might be new or that you don't have a governance system for. But, you know, you might have a team that like, hey, we want to do some really cool stuff with AI, or we want to check out, you know, other services that in our production account, we're not actually allowed to deploy. Because, you know, if it is production, you want to make sure that you only do the things that you're supposed to do. So you could set that on a per account basis, but if you have a large organization and you have multiple teams within your organization that have production, then one of the patterns that you could follow is deploy all of the production accounts into the production OU, have a lot of guardrails and SCPs applied to them, and then have experimental dev and test OUs where there are less rules. There would still be rules like don't spin up an M5, you know, like 16x large, please. Thank you. That could be an SCP that you could have on there. But otherwise, all bets are off. Go on and experiment, right?
Yeah, so we also quite often recommend to go broad with OUs rather than deep because SCPs are inherited. So if you put an SCP at the root level, it will go all the way down to your children. So it's one way to also group like restrictions. Especially if you have one product within your organization that is like very restricted because it's your financial product, for example, and then that can be locked down. Everything under it can be locked down a lot more than the other ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, it kind of depends on how your business is shaped as well, right? That kind of needs to reflect it. But yeah, there you go. We now have a production OU. And again, you know, ask questions, not just Casey or to Casey, because he's the only one asking questions right now. I'm sure you have lots of them.
I'm really good at being annoying and asking questions.
I love it. Please keep it coming. So there it is. We see its details, its compliance status, which in this case is compliant, which is not very hard to achieve when you don't have any accounts in your OU. But if you scroll down, you will see the accounts in the OU and the guardrails that are applied. All right, that was OUs. Pretty simple, but thanks for the great questions. Let's get to the real good stuff, the account factory. So an OU without an account is rather pointless, right? So let's make an account that can live in our new OU. So we go to Account Factory in AWS Control Tower, and from the left hand, it's in the left-hand menu as all the other stuff is. And to create a new account, we click the button called Enroll Account. That might sound kind of weird because why doesn't it say Create Account, right? But you would use the same button if you have an account that you've onboarded Say you extend a organizational invitation to another account, and then you would need to enroll that into AWS Control Tower. That's why this button is specifically called Enroll Account. Before we actually go ahead and deploy the account, I want to draw your attention to the network configuration. These are the settings for the VPC that will be deployed in your new account. The thing is, however, I don't want a VPC in my new account. I want to build my own VPCs. Thank you very much. So there's actually two ways that you can prevent VPCs from being automatically deployed in new accounts. You can achieve that by editing the network configuration. So let's do that. If we click on the edit button for the network configuration, it takes you to this lovely page. And there's actually two ways of preventing VPCs from being deployed in new accounts. The first option is removing the subnets and setting the maximum number of private subnets to 0, turning off the internet accessible subnet toggle switch, which is off by default now. I'm not sure if that always was the case, but that might have changed. And change the address range to 10.0.0.0/16, which is weird. I'm not sure why that is, but it says so in the documentation, and I tend to follow documentation. The second option is by removing all of the AWS regions. As you can see, there's only one region selected right now. It's Asia Pacific, which is Sydney, and you can clear that. And if you clear that option, it will also not deploy a VPC. Or if you score fairly high on the neuroticism personality trait, like I do, I like to do both. And then just make sure that there's absolutely no way that can be deployed. Of course, if you do want a pre-made VPC, then ignore everything I just said and deploy them. But be warned, you will get VPCs with the same CIDR range. And that's not fun, because if you want to start hooking them up in one way, shape, or form, like through Transit Gateway or VPC peering, you will get CIDR range collisions, and those are not fun to deal with.
Yep, if I want to create VPCs, do it as a function of an account being created, and that is managed by a separate process that will handle making sure CIDR ranges do not collide.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously, infrastructure as code is like a clear option, a clear way to go here. No matter which type of infrastructure as code you want to use, that should probably be the way that you want to do it. If you do want to set it up, you could do it in clever ways with customization pipelines or event lifecycle events and event bridge. But that becomes pretty hacky really, really quickly. Usually, you just hand out these accounts to teams who have a pretty clear idea of what they want to do anyway. So. All right, we're back to the account factory page, and we just want to make the new account. So we click the enroll button, and that takes us to this lovely enroll account overview. You need another email address, again, obviously. The account email address is the email address that will be used for the root access of the account. If you want to log into the account as a root user, or emails that are being sent about the account will be sent to that email address. The AWS SSO email can be the same email address. It will create an SSO user for this account specifically, and you can use a separate email address or the same email address. But this is one of those little caveats that you're only familiar with if you've done it. That is that the account email is for logging in as a root account, and the SSO email is for the creation of the SSO user. They are not the same thing, but they can use the same email address. All right, let's create that, move on, and it says that an enrollment request has been submitted. That's really interesting. So we're just back, and now we need to kind of trust in the fact that it's actually happening. But it does give you a link up there in the blue banner where it says, hey, I've actually did a request with the AWS Service Catalog to create this account for you. So if we click that, because we're curious, it takes us to the AWS Service Catalog, and we can see that it's actually provisioning a product. So that tells us that this account provisioning system is actually happening through the AWS Service Catalog. It's not important, but it's very interesting to note, and you might want to, discover or go in there and have a look around. AWS Control Tower is actually a service which is leveraging a whole bunch of other services. It's the magic glue that makes everything happen. If you go back to the Control Tower environment and you click on accounts, you can actually see as well that a new account is being created and its current status is enrolling. Same kind of process as with the OU is happening, where it's basically creating an account using the AWS organization service. And then once that's created, that's really fast, right? It's enrolling it. So it's taking it, putting it in the right OU, applying all the guardrails and SCPs that we wanted to, apply to it. All right. And there it is, a new Shiny account all ready to go. That was fairly easy. The email accounts were interesting. You need to know that. But apart from that, it's all just pretty straightforward. So if we go back to the AWS Control Tower SSO login page and we refresh it, you can see that a new account has been added to the list, which is really cool. But for those of you that pay really, really close attention, if you look at the privileges that are assigned to me, you can see that they're actually different. For management, I'm AWS Administrator Access, same for Audit and Log Archive. And if we look at production, it actually says AWS Organizations Full Access, which is not the same thing. So let's dive into that for a little bit. Why did that happen? That's because if we go into the single sign-on service and looking at the accounts that are being managed, we see that the production account has the group AWS Control Tower admins assigned to it, which makes sense. But the permission set that is assigned to that group, of which Martin is a member, is AWS Organizations Full Access. And that's not what I want. I want AWS admins. So what we need to do is we change the permission set for that group. And I'm going to explain how all this works in a minute. First, I'm going to do it, then I'm going to explain it. So we see the permission set that is assigned for the group AWS Control Tower admins for the production 01 account. And we remove AWS Organizations Full Access and we change it to administrator access. When we save those changes and we go back to the login page, we can see, hey, now Martin has AWS administrator access to that production account. And we can log in and do whatever we want. So I want to talk a little bit about those permission sets because I find that a lot of people struggle with those. If we're going to create a custom SSO group and permission set to make it a little bit more clear, but there's a couple of things that we really need to remember. That is that accounts have users or groups assigned to them. A user or a group has a permission set assigned to it per account. So Martin might be assigned to the production account with a permission set of administrator, and Casey might be assigned to the production account with a permission set of read-only. Permission sets are not assigned to groups or users, and they are not assigned to accounts. They are assigned to a user or group that is assigned to an account. That takes a little time to wrap your head around, but that's why we're doing this talk, so we can show that to you and you can go back and be really, really awesome. Let's make a custom permission set and a custom group, and that will make everything a lot clearer. So we're going to go to SSO, permission sets. I want to create a permission set. I just want to go for a predefined one. Now, permission sets are basically just IAM policies. So you can actually create a custom permission set and then select a pre-created IAM policy, which is awesome. Or if you want to go really bespoke, like maybe you want a permission set that allows users to only reboot certain EC2 instances. I don't know. Then you would create a custom IAM policy for that custom permission set. Luckily, all I want right now is a billing permission for users so that they can log in and see what the monthly cost is. So I'm going to go for a predefined permission set. I'm going to select billing. I got to give it a name and a description. Set the session duration. This is when you get kicked out of your SSO session after like an hour, which everybody finds really, really annoying. Me too, but it is a massive security feature. So, if it's a minor thing, like how long are you going to work in a day, right? It's going to be like maximum 8 times that you need to do it. Just leave it at an hour. You get to review it. I create it, and there we go. There's a permission set, a new and shiny one called billing. All right. Now we need to have a way of assigning that to an account. So I want to create a group to go with that permission set, because it makes sense. You don't need a group per permission set. You can just assign it to any existing group, but I just want to make a separate group because it makes sense. So I'm going to create a group. I'm going to call it AWS Billing Admins because it kind of aligns with the naming convention that AWS is already using. I'm going to assign myself to it, Martin, down there. You don't need to. You can do that later. And off you go. That creates a group. That's all there is to it. Then I'm going to go to AWS Accounts. I'm going to select a bunch of them, in this case, all of them. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to assign users or groups. That's that button, the blue button up in the top right there. I'm going to select AWS Billing Admins, click Next, and see, now I have to select the permission set. So it's an account with a group and a permission set. It's always a combination of these three things, or a group or a user. So I'm assigning billing for the 4 accounts to the billing group. And reviewing and submitting. And there we go. It says that it's configuring. And again, this is one of those progress bar things. This one's important. Do not click away. Usually you can click away. Here it says, no. Do not leave this page while we are configuring these accounts. You got to just leave it there. Luckily, all of our browsers nowadays have tabs. So if you really want to go and do something else, just, open a tab and go do something else. But do not close this.
Very important call out.
Yeah. See, this is one of those little caveats where I hope you go back and when you actually see this page for yourself, you go, oh, I remember that guy telling me to not move away from this page. And maybe I will have helped you that day. That would be nice. So if we refresh the single sign-on login page, you can now see that Martin is assigned to multiple groups, and I can now log in to all of these accounts using either the AWS administrator access or the billing access. Important thing to note, what you're seeing here, the name, that's the name of the permission set. So it's not the name of the group. So if you want to make sure that the people understand when they're logging in what permissions they're getting, name your permission sets really well, because that is what they will be seeing on the login page. I'm going to try and log into the production account as billing. And there it is, seeing all of it. I've been running this for a couple of days now. No, sorry, I tell a lie. I'm not logged into the production account. I'm logged into the management account because I want to see billing for everything. The management account is picking up the bill for all of the accounts, which is why you're also seeing that tab, Bill Details by Account. If you click that, you see an overview of all the different accounts in your organization and the cost that they are generating. As you can see, I've accumulated the staggering amount of 63 NZ dollar cents over a couple of days, proving that Control Tower doesn't need to be expensive.
The one question I have is, what is the benefits of being able to break down costs by the account?
Well, obviously tagging is really important if you want to, get a really high resolution, fine-grained overview of where cost is generated. But if you want to get a general sense and you have accounts per team or per project, it's a really quick way of seeing, hey, our AI project is generating a lot of cost compared to the other accounts that we have within our organization. I find that clients especially find that extremely helpful.
Well, my take of it is that generally developers are one of the most laziest people you will ever meet. They will not, you will tell them to do something, and then if it makes their job harder, then they kind of won't unless you force it upon them. This is speaking from experience as a developer in a past life.
I hear it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and
you can help people to clean up.
Yeah, and also as a manager, telling developers to actually, do what I say. Interesting both sides of this coin. But using accounts means that the developers can be lazy. As long as they're spinning stuff up in the right account, you can put a cost to that product or service, and that will allow you to get a fairly accurate cost to serve metric, especially if you're using a SaaS product, which is quite an important product to have. To be able to report back to C-level. And it also, incentivizes splitting things up by account, and that is where that logical border, as Tony talked about in the previous video, really is in AWS.
And if you go into the account, you can still open it up and look per service per account. So, if you want to see what Tim, for example, is doing in his account and why he's generating so much cost, you can dive in there and see, it's actually EC2 instances or what have you. Thanks for that, Casey. All right, so that's account. That's permission sets in SSO. Here's one of my favorite topics, guardrails. Control Tower comes with a mandatory set of guardrails, and they are really, really good. And that's why they're mandatory. You should have them. There's also a set of strongly recommended guardrails, and I personally feel that that's pretty much almost the same as mandatory. There's really not a reason to not deploy them. If you look at the top one, for example, disallow creation of access keys for the root user, it just makes so much sense. Like there's absolutely no reason why you would not want to apply this. So personally, I feel that you should apply all of the strongly recommended guardrails. But for now, let's start with the top one, and I'm going to show you how to actually do that. So if you want to know what a guardrail is and what it does, this is a preventive guardrail, which means that it applies a service control policy. This is taken from the AWS documentation site, which is amazing. And it shows you what it does from an SCP point of view. If you read it, you can see that it is affect deny on the action create access key for the principal root. So that reads pretty easy. Root is not allowed to create an access key ever. Easy. So if we want to apply that, we go to guardrails in Control Tower. Here's a whole big list of them. Luckily, it has one of those really good filters. I filter on the word access keys, and there's our guardrail. I click on the guardrail. That takes me to the details page, which is kind of the same as what we just saw on the documentation page. And we're going to say, hey, I want to enable this guardrail on an OU. You would want to apply this on your root OU so that it gets, it gets inherited by everything in your organization. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do it on the production OU. You select the OU and you say, hey, I want to enable that guardrail. There you go. Easy as. We've enabled the selected guardrail. It says so in the green banner. And yeah. If you want to see what that actually looks like, we can. You see that guardrail component in the middle right there, and it says, hey, it's actually an SCP. So if we click that, that takes us to AWS organizations, to the production OU. And then if we click that tab down there that says policies, and we look, we see that in the middle, we have the AWS-guardrails-random string policy. If we click on that and we scroll all the way down, you can see that what actually happened is that SCP that we saw earlier for that guardrail has been appended to this set of SCP. So essentially what's happening is it's going into the organizations, it's going to that SCP that's applied to that OU, and it's appending that guardrail to the stack of SCP rules. All right. That was pretty much most of what I wanted to show you demo-wise. Still heaps more to talk about. I could talk about this for days on end. There's a selection of what I would consider aftermarket components for Control Tower that you will most likely want to implement. There's this thing called customizations for AWS Control Tower, CFCT. It's really awesome. You deploy it in your management account. It sets up a code pipeline environment for you with either an S3 bucket or code commit, and it allows you to automatically deploy resources or configuration on your accounts. Roles, for example, that you might want to use for CI/CD pipelines. Maybe you want every account in your organization to have a S3 bucket pre-made for pictures of cats, because that's what we all like, right? Amazon
Martin,
yeah, go on.
Just to jump in there, Sammy AWS has a question as well. Would it make sense to use AWS organizations and AWS Control Tower in conjunction?
You cannot use AWS Control Tower without AWS organizations. AWS Control Tower leverages AWS organizations, so it's kind of the same. Control Tower is kind of the next level, the layer on top of organizations. So you can have organizations without Control Tower, but you cannot have Control Tower without organizations. Does that make sense?
I think that answers perfectly. And we have another question coming through. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. Do you recommend using Control Tower for small/medium companies or startups?
It depends how comfortable you are at deploying them. If you have a multi-account environment already, or you are planning to have one, you can be a small or medium-sized business and still have a pretty mature footprint in the cloud, right? If all you're running is like a 3-tiered app and that's all you will be doing for the foreseeable future, then I think the answer would be no. But if you have multiple accounts with multiple projects going on at the same time, and it's becoming hard to manage, or you can foresee that becoming pretty difficult to manage, you don't want to spend like multiple FTEs just on managing your cloud environment, then yes, the answer would most definitely be yes. If you go about it in a structured way and you maybe get a little help from AWS or a partner to start off with, control towers are an amazing and really well documented solution for managing that environment. So I guess it depends, but the answer is yes. If you have multiple accounts, I personally think you should be using Control Tower.
Yeah, the AWS point of view on that is you should be using Control Tower for any real environment that is for a business. Just because if and when you're growing, it just takes away all of that pain. And if in doubt, then reach out to your account manager or solution architect, either through, if you have the email address, reach out to them there, or go to the AWS New Zealand Technical Community LinkedIn page. You can reach out there, or on the website with the contact us. We will be more than happy to jump in there and give our opinion and also our assistance and lead you to the correct partner to help out.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I'm almost done. I have a couple of more pitfalls that I just want to call out. Don't use default VPCs. Mind your region. Honestly, all of the time, just keep looking at that region, because sometimes you deploy stuff where you don't want to deploy it. Enrolling accounts is a really well-documented process, but be careful. It's not as easy as it seems. Organizational mergers or acquisitions are fun and interesting, because now you have 2 control towers, and that's a really fun talk to have as well. Maybe I'll do a talk on that one day. Customization for AWS Control Tower can break in exciting ways, but it is so worth it. I really recommend that you look at customizations. Learn to love CloudTrail and CloudWatch. That goes without saying. That's pretty much true everywhere. And the AWS IAM Policy Simulator is absolutely amazing. Not enough people know about it. I don't usually put links in my slides, but this one, if you're wondering why a thing doesn't work and you're like, hey, I'm an admin, I should be able to do this thing, but I'm not allowed to, use the policy simulator. It will tell you that you might be blocked by an SCP or whatever. It is such a good tool. Please check it out. This was that question you were asking earlier. I'm not going to go into it, but yeah, the question, is Control Tower for you? It depends. I think it is. Why I personally think you should use it? Security creates freedom, and that's really weird. But by giving people the sense of safety, by saying, hey, here's an account that we've deployed with guardrails, with SCPs, you're not able to actually spin anything up like that has a 3-year commitment to it. That creates a sense of safety that will let developers and engineers just go ahead and experiment to their heart's content. So security creates freedom. It's really, really good. It's based off of best practice stuff, standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, why define all this stuff yourself when people the likes of Casey and the rest of AWS have done it for you? And if it's not developed in your organization, that means that you can go out and hire talent and say, hey, we've got a control tower. And the response is probably going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm familiar with those. So those are my personal couple of reasons why I think you should use it. Obviously, to stand next to the amazing list that AWS has of reasons why you should be using Control Tower.
Cool, thank you for that. We just need to dive into some wrapping up of the session, because we want to talk about, we've learned a lot about Control Tower, but how do we learn about the wider services of AWS, and that comes to this lovely part here, which is training and certification. I always harp on about this, but cloud skills are in such high demand, and that's just not in New Zealand. This is like any country you go to, people are crying out for cloud skills. Partners, companies, everyone I talk to is just like, we can't hire fast enough. Everyone's poaching from each other in New Zealand. It's quite interesting seeing the same person from like 3 different companies. But the real key one here is for any free upskilling, the AWS Skill Builder is an amazing tool. It's really good for self-paced learning, so you can actually define the role that you are currently in, or the role that you're aspiring to be in, and it will outline a path to actually get to competency. And also, if you wanted to learn like a particular skill set, such as you wanted to go into ML AI, it will again set out that pathway to actually build that competency within AWS. If you are interested in any more awareness or exam readiness, then definitely on this right-hand side, There's a lot of good resources there. And on the left-hand side, if you're maybe a bigger company, or it's really hard for developers to justify taking like an hour or two out of their day. Quite often it gets eclipsed by deadlines or other needs. So this is a really good way to do a forcing function where you can reach out to your business and say, hey, this is important. We need to make sure that we are upskilling our developers and everything like that. And by having this, a training partner coming in or AWS led training, that means that, that day is set aside. The developers will be there, and it means that they will be focusing on upskilling themselves. And from that front, being ready to, push the projects and initiatives that you have as a business. And if you are wanting certification, AWS certifications are a super good way to show that you have competencies. So when you are wanting to go into, companies that use AWS or our AWS partners, regardless of where they are in the world, you can get 50% off exam vouchers if you are in New Zealand and Australia. I have actually sneakily tried to get someone outside of those two countries to use it. Doesn't work, which is upsetting, but don't worry about screenshotting or anything like that. This video will be available on demand, so you can pause it then, and just take your time to get all of the QR codes. Again, please do reach out to us if you want to learn more about a particular service or a feature or a particular topic. We really do want to know your opinion, and the best way to do that is through that AWS New Zealand technical community on LinkedIn. You can request to join it. Definitely, it goes a long way to making sure we can actually deliver better value in these sessions. We have a few minutes, so if you have any follow-up questions, then just the time to ask it. Otherwise, we will let everyone get back to the day job, so to speak. Martin, there was one question that was pretty cheeky. Someone asking if you have a channel to follow.
A channel to follow. I have a blog .carols.com. Not as active as I should be, but you can check that out, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I usually talk about stuff or chat about things. Maybe I'll start a channel. Who knows? It's actually a really good idea. Thanks.
Like now you're creating competition. Okay, that's awesome. No, it's awesome. Like, you are amazing. Again, I thank you a lot for coming onto the channel and sharing your knowledge, sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much for providing a platform. I really appreciate it.
It's awesome. There is one last question coming in last minute. How difficult is it to migrate from AWS organizations to Control Tower?
Well, it depends. It's not really a migration. If you're already in AWS organizations, then you can essentially create a Control Tower on top of it. On paper, it's really, really easy. You just simply go into Control Tower and say, like, give me one. You need to have a look at what SCPs do you have already applied. What are you already doing with automation and deployment in those accounts? The enrolment process should not be destructive. But, measure twice, cut once, as always. So it's not, I wouldn't say hard, but when you're dealing with production workloads, you should take the time to do it properly. So it's mostly investigative work, and then you would onboard an account. You would onboard the organization using AWS Control Tower.
Yeah, I completely agree. Anything in production, the adage of measure twice, cut once, because once something goes wrong in production, it's all hands on deck until it gets fixed.
Yep. And that's also true for accounts that are not in your organization, but might carry production workloads. If you want to ingest them in your organization and then enroll them into Control Tower, it's essentially the same type of situation. Measure twice, cut once. Make sure that you know exactly what type of resources are being shared with that account. Make sure what kind of SCPs will be applied to that account once it's enrolled, because maybe it has a process where it spins up a daily EC2 instance, and there's an SCP that says, no more of that. And then things will break in interesting ways. So a lot of investigation needs to happen.
But that shouldn't scare you. It's there's a lot of the time there's that edge cases. So but it's very important. Just if you understand your production environment and all the things it does, and you just have like the checklist, you say yes, I thought about that. Then it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. But if you just go in and go whole,
but you should do it. But it is totally worth it.
Yes. It is. And that is our number one recommendation whenever we talk to a new business is Control Tower and the security services, getting everything in order, because that allows businesses to accelerate their growth. Start that flywheel.
It'll give you that single pane of glass. It's just so easy to see what's happening.
Cool. Anyway, so that is the end of our stream. I haven't seen any new questions come through, so I think this is a good place to end it. But yeah, definitely reach out to us on the LinkedIn group or LinkedIn to us personally. So both Casey or Martin Carroll, feel free to reach out. AWS, the LinkedIn group, AWS New Zealand Technical Community. Yeah, definitely join it if you actually like more of this content. And we are broadcasting at this time every week now. So hopefully we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you, everyone. And catch you next time.